This is Joe Biden. On August 24th, 2022, Biden entered the Roosevelt Room in the White House to make a very special announcement about student debt forgiveness. But before he did, he went into a rambling 3-minute digression about his father. Here's some highlights.
I remember walking up, my dad, like probably a lot of your folks, cared a lot about your education. My dad's greatest regret was that he never got to go to college. And my dad was a very well-read man, and my dad was a well-dressed, refined fella, and this is before cell phones. My dad would, when your dad works in an automobile agency, the great advantage, you get a new car to go to the prom, or a good used car off the lot. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking.
Anyway, he's telling a story about how his dad wanted to send Joe to college, but apparently Joe didn't understand the concept.
You always say, Joey, you're going to be a college man. And I say, Dad, but what does that matter? I mean, you can still get fired if you're a college man.
Why would you even admit to that?
And I remember my senior year, I got into one of the little Ivies, and I got into a number of schools. And
I'm dying to know which Ivy League school accepted Joey Biden.
We're trying to get the money, even with financial assistance, to be able to go there. And I remember going down after a baseball game. So I went down to my 51 Plymouth with beach towels for seat covers. And I had my uniform on, my spikes off. I ran in and give him my word, true story.
Oh, good! I was worried that he was making it up. So Biden reminisces about how his dad tried to take out a loan to pay for Joe's Ivy League education.
I walked out and my dad was pacing back and forth. And he looked up, he said, "Oh, Joey, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I went to Charlie and asked to borrow the money. He said, he won't lend it to me." He said, "I'm so ashamed. I'm so damn ashamed." My dad was like millions of parents all across the country. Want to help the kids to get to school, but there was just no way to be able to do it.
And so poor Joe Biden was forced to scrap his dream of going to college and took a job next to his dad at the used car dealership. And oh wait, none of that happened because Joey Honey was able to go to college and eventually graduated from law school at the bottom of his class. But sure, an Ivy League school accepted him. So the moral of the story is that if you want to go to college, you'll find a way or something. Great stuff.
Here's what my administration is going to do to provide more breathing room for people so they have less burden by student debt. And quite frankly, to fix the system itself, which when we came in, we both acknowledged was broken in terms of, anyway.
You gotta love when the President of the United States just trails off and doesn't finish a thought. But yes, Joe Biden is right about one thing. The system is broken. Student debt doubled from $800 billion in 2010 to $1.6 trillion in 2020. But instead of completely reforming the federal student loan system, or more preferably nuking it from orbit, Joe Biden's genius plan is to add fuel to the fire in an effort to buy votes from Democrats before the midterms.
My campaign for president, I made a commitment. That would provide student debt relief. And I'm honoring that commitment today. Using the authority Congress granted the Department of Education, we will forgive $10,000 in outstanding federal student loans.
Biden has ordered the Department of Education to do this despite the fact that neither of them have the congressional authority to forgive loans. Here's Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi back in July 2021.
People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress. The President can't do it. So that's not even a discussion.
And Biden did it anyway, using very broad emergency powers granted under the 2003 HEROES Act. But the way they're interpreting the act is incredibly flimsy. For one thing, throughout the pandemic, the borrowers in question have not accrued interest on their loans and have not been required to make payments for the last 2.5 years. Second, most outstanding student loans were taken out before March 2020, before the pandemic. So their reasoning makes no sense. Mark my words, this will no doubt be challenged in court, and the Biden administration is going to lose bigly. Now, as if forgiving $10,000 wasn't enough, most borrowers will be eligible for double that amount.
In addition, students who come from low-income families, which allowed them to qualify to receive a Pell Grant, will have their debt reduced $20,000.
Pell Grants are given to undergraduate students from low and middle income families who have exceptional financial need. These grants do not need to be paid back, and you're allowed to receive Pell Grants for as many as 12 terms. As an example, during the 2020-2021 academic year, 6.3 million students received a total of $26.5 billion in Pell Grants. That's an average of $4,200 per student. So these students that already received grants that may have totaled tens of thousands of dollars over the course of their education are now also eligible to receive an additional $20,000 in forgiveness. But if you didn't receive Pell Grants, i.e. free money, you only received 10 grand in forgiveness because equity or something.
No high-income individual or high-income household on top of the 5%, in the top 5% of incomes, by the way, will benefit from this action, period. You make more than that, you don't qualify.
Oh, good! I was worried that we were just giving away hundreds of billions of dollars to just anybody.
95% of the borrowers can benefit from these actions. That's 43 million people. Of the 43 million, over 60% are Pell Grant recipients. That's 27 million people who will get $20,000 in debt relief.
So theoretically, if Pell Grant recipients are the borrowers having the worst time of it, and if each of these 27 million recipients received $20,000 in debt relief, that would come to a maximum cost of $540 billion. In fact, the Penn-Wharton budget model estimates that forgiving federal college student loan debt will cost between $300 billion and $980 billion over a 10-year budget window. But whatever, it's just money. Now, what about students who paid off their loans? Will they see any of that sweet, sweet forgiveness? To answer that question, here's Peter Doocy from Fox News and the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona.
People that already paid their student loans,
right,
they don't get anything out of this deal.
Right.
That's right. Okay.
So if you took out a loan and paid it back in full like a responsible adult, you will receive $0 in loan forgiveness.
Right.
Actually, he's kind of wrong, because as it turns out, there's one small little detail that Secretary Cardona didn't understand during his interview, because the Department of Education had to make a clarification the following day. If you paid off your loan after March 13th, 2020, i.e. during the payment pause, you can call your service provider and get a refund equaling up to $10,000 or $20,000, depending on whether you had Pell Grants or not. And remember, this loan forgiveness scam is being done to, quote, address the financial harms of the pandemic. But if a borrower was able to pay it back in full within the 2.5-year payment pause, when they were not required to make any payments, chances are they weren't in dire straits.
Nearly 45% can have their student debt fully canceled. That's 20 million people who can start getting on with their lives.
Start getting on with their lives. These people went to college. They're supposed to have an advantage in life over people who didn't go to college. But, according to Joe Biden, this college debt is the only thing holding them back.
All this means people can finally crawl out from under that mountain of debt, to get on top of their rent and their utilities, to finally think about buying a home or starting a family or starting a business.
So if you have student loan debt and $10,000 or $20,000 was the thing that was holding you back from buying a house, just wait until you learn what a down payment or a mortgage is. Not to mention that people start families all the time without money. And guess who swoops in and gives them food stamps, WIC, Medicare and Medicaid, CHIP, TANF, Head Start, earned income tax credits? Oh, that's right, the federal government. Which means you, the American taxpayer, are paying the bill. Congrats, suckers. Now, the top line is that up to $20,000 per borrower is going to be forgiven in student debt. But there are some details regarding Biden's new policy that have fallen through the cracks and haven't been widely reported. For example, according to this White House fact sheet, the Department of Education announced a proposal that would do the following for income-driven repayment plans. For undergraduate loans, the federal government would cut in half the amount that borrowers have to pay each month, from 10% to 5% of discretionary income.
That's income after you pay the necessities like housing, food, and the like. You currently pay 10%. We're cutting that in half to 5%.
Translation, it's basically allowing borrowers to pay half as much each month, therefore doubling the amount of time it will take them to pay back their loans and increasing their interest by tens of thousands of dollars.
I believe my plan is responsible and fair.
No, it's not. Again, if you cut the bare minimum monthly payment from 10% to 5%, you're just extending the amount of time for borrowers to pay down their debt. And after 20 years, the Department of Education will cancel that remaining balance. To put it simply, borrowers on income-driven repayment plans will pay even less per month and will ultimately get more of their debt canceled. All that is going to do is encourage borrowers to take out even more in loans because they know that they will never have to pay most of it back. And the federal government is going to let them get away with it. Next, the proposed rule would raise the amount of income that is considered non-discretionary income and therefore is protected from repayment, guaranteeing that no borrower earning under 225% of the federal poverty level, about the annual equivalent of a $15 minimum wage for a single borrower, will have to make a monthly payment. Translation, if you spend your $40,000 student loan on a degree in philosophy and you end up working in retail, you'll never have to make a payment again. All Biden's policy is going to do is encourage even more irresponsibility. The rule also covers the borrower's unpaid monthly interest, so that unlike other existing income-driven repayment plans, no borrower's loan balance will grow as long as they make their monthly payments, even when that monthly payment is zero because their income is low. So for example, if you take out a $120,000 student loan to pay for a useless degree in journalism from NYU that leads to jobs that only pay $35,000 a year, the government will make your monthly payment $0, count that as a completed monthly payment, and then after 20 years, they reward you for not paying it back by eliminating your debt. And finally, the proposed rule would forgive loan balances after 10 years of payments instead of 20 years for borrowers with original loan balances of $12,000 or less. So for the record, if you took out a student loan for $12,000 at say 7% interest to completely pay it off over 10 years, you would have to make payments of $139 a month. And that seems pretty reasonable, right? Not so fast. With the new income-driven repayment plans and the non-discretionary income rule, the government is making it easier for you to game the system. And that means you probably won't have to pay a dime. And think about this for a minute. If you go to college and you can't afford to pay off a $12,000 student loan within a 10-year period, then that's proof that the college courses you took and the degree you received are useless. And of course, this is all unsustainable and is going to increase the national debt. But the big question is, how is all of this going to be paid for? Well, that's a video for next time, if there is a next time. Anyway, that's it for now. Be sure to hit that like button, check out these videos that you absolutely missed, and be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel so you don't miss part 2 of my breakdown. As always, thanks for watching.